Oh, hello, welcome. Before we get going on today's video, I thought it'd be fun to try and make our very own video game character. So I brought along all the equipment that we need. Got a pair of scissors there. I have some coloured pens, some googly eyes, which are very important. I've also got some PVA glue, and then I've also got some card or photo paper, whichever is your preference. You're going to need that rigidity. So, first thing that you're going to want to do, get rid of all that, and then put a ball on the table and attach a couple of eyes. Ta-da! Hello everyone, welcome to the Re-Review, the series where I get to replay and reassess games from my favourite gaming era. I'm Brian, also known as UK Gen Zoidberg, and I was incredibly lucky to get a job working on Games X magazine when I was just 17 years old. This meant that I got paid to play, write and talk about video games all day, every day, and it eventually led to me joining the team on Amiga Action as well. In this series, I'm going to be taking a look back at all of the games that I reviewed during this time, and seeing whether or not I scored them correctly first time around. In this episode, the game that I'm going to be taking another look at is Putty, which was developed and published by System 3 in 1992. I first encountered Putty, or Silly Putty as it was known at the time, when I went to visit the offices of System 3 in London to get an early look at the game. A colourful platform game was quite a departure for the company at the time, who were more well known for the Last Ninja series on the Commodore 64, as well as International Karate and Archer McLean's superb sequel IK+. The company was founded in 1982 by Mark Cale, who has remained CEO to this day. In an interview with industry trade website MCV to celebrate System 3's 30th anniversary, he stated that the company's goal was always to put gameplay and playability first. Their first game was a 3D shooter called Colony 7 for the Atari 8-bit, although the first game that brought them to my attention was Death Star Interceptor, which I played on Spectrum. This was a game in which you controlled a lone starfighter in an assault on a moon-sized enemy base, featuring some very familiar sounding music on the title screen. Put simply, I very much doubt Disney would allow this game to exist today. It was the aforementioned output for the Commodore 64 that really cemented their reputation though. In addition to the Last Ninja trilogy, they also produced a number of critical favourites, including Tusker, Vendetta and Turbocharge. They even published Twister Mother of Charlotte on the Spectrum, which was the debut game by a small team that you may have heard of called Sensible Software. Many of their games were converted to the Amiga with varying degrees of success. My personal favourite was Myth: History in the Making, which was a graphically stunning journey through the world of gods and demons. It received 96% in its review in Amiga Action just a few months before I joined the team, and it's easy to see why. Turbocharge was all set to be their next game for the Amiga, and it was even previewed in many of the games magazines at the time. According to the website Games That Weren't, it was a fast-moving arcade racer, but System 3 were ultimately not happy with it and decided not to release it. Considering the quality of some of the racing games on the Amiga, I can't help but wonder if this was the right decision. This meant that Putty was their next release after having spent 18 months in development. Early on in its production, it had been discussed as being released on cartridge rather than on floppy disks, due to the potential of anti-piracy and the lack of disc swapping. However, this would have meant that the game would have had a retail price of £60, twice what most full-price releases cost at the time, so the idea was scrapped. After successful releases on the SNES and CD32, work began on a sequel. Demos of Putty Squad started to appear on magazine cover discs in early 1994, and I can remember being very impressed when I played it. Many magazines also reviewed the game and it scored highly across the board, but for some reason only the SNES version ever got released. It finally appeared as freeware on the System 3 website in 2013, which was the same time as the remakes on the PS4 and Switch. And if you have an A500 Mini, I strongly recommend that you download it. Over the years, System 3 have picked up the rights to many retro game franchises, leading them to publish the likes of Impossible Mission and James Pond Robocod on the Nintendo Switch, the latter of which must surely be a contender, alongside Resident Evil 4, for a game released on the most number of systems. Now let's check out my original review and see what I thought of Putty in 1992. My review appeared in Amiga Action issue 38 from November 1992. The aquatic games Pinball Fantasies and Curse of Enchantia were the other games that I reviewed in the same issue, and I've previously covered all three of them on the re-review. When I played and reviewed the game, it was called Silly Putty, but by the time it hit the shop shelves a few weeks later, that title had been shortened to Putty, as it was no longer a licensed product. When it was released on the CD32 in 1994, the title was changed again to Super Putty in order to match the SNES version, but the game remained identical. In my review, I said that Putty was right up there with IK Plus as one of the best games produced by System 3, and that it was one of the most original games I'd played in a long time. Both the graphics and sound were singled out for praise, as I stated that they were some of the best around at the time. My only real complaints about the game were the slightly sluggish controls and the difficulty curve that ramped up too quickly. I awarded it 88% overall, just short of the magic 90 which would have given it an Action Accolade stamp. Here's how my score compares to the ones in other magazines at the time. To sum up, Silly Putty is a great little game that has the added bonus of being original to the bargain. Definitely worth buying. Now it's time for the playtest. Let's see if Putty is still worth playing today. Okay, so the game starts with this training level, which gets you used to all the controls. You can move and jump as you would expect, up to jump. Holding down the fire button will allow you to stretch to get across gaps. So yeah, so you want to punch, you tap left or right. If you want to pick up the robots, you have to absorb them, so you stand in front and go flat, and that absorbs them. And then holding down the fire button and tapping down quickly on the joystick will inflate you so that you blow up and create like a smart bomb. There is a lot more to it, but unfortunately that's all the game tells you on the training level. The designers of this game did say that they were inspired by the Tex Avery cartoons, and that's certainly evident when you start to see all the different sound effects and how good the cartoon graphics are. And so the aim of the game is to retrieve and rescue a number of robots, and there's a certain number per level. So this opening level you only have to rescue 2. On these early levels, the robots that you have to rescue are encased in ice, so they're not actually moving, whereas on later levels they will be moving around. The cat that appears in those little interludes there is actually called Dweezil, and he would go on to play a much bigger part in the game's sequel. Well, there's not much of a puzzle element to these early levels of the game. It's when you get to the latter stages and the robots start moving around, that's where it starts to resemble Lemmings a lot more. There are a number of hidden collectibles on each level, and they do actually appear in the same place every single time you play. Like I said, first time around, the controls do feel a little bit sluggish at times. So there can be like it feels like a half-second delay between you pressing left or right and Putty actually moving. And while that does feel a little bit annoying at times, it feels as though the game's designers actually took it into account. Oh, no way. Yes, if you don't have enough health when you attempt to do that, then you will also die. This is the point where the robots will start moving and will quite happily like run to their death. So I think Uncle Ted has actually made the enemies freeze.
Yeah, one of the controls that the game didn't tell you at the start is that if you want to stop the robots from moving, you can actually produce a cup of coffee when you make yourself go flat by holding down the fire button. Quite why robots want coffee, I have no idea. Yeah, there's a robot drinking coffee. As good as a lot of the sound in this game is, it really does start to get annoying in places. I think a lot of the enemies respawn far too quickly on this as well. That's definitely a flaw in the design. You can spend ages trying to get an enemy to disappear off screen, only to then have them reappear a few seconds later, and it's really annoying. But anyway, I think that's enough of the playtest for now. I think I've seen enough to form a new opinion on it. So let's see what that opinion is.
Putty is quite a difficult game to like, as while there are many things about it that are brilliant, there's just as many about it that frustrate. There aren't many platform games on the Amiga that look as good as this one. It's colourful, full of humorous touches throughout, and has some great enemy design. In addition to looking good, the levels are also incredibly well laid out, so it's always obvious what you can jump on and what you can't. To a lesser degree, the sound is good too. The title music is by Richard Joseph, musician behind Sensible Soccer, the Chaos Engine and the James Pond series, and it's suitably toe-tapping, and many of the sound effects raise a smile as well, but there's also a lot about it that grates after a while. Although the game starts with a training level, there's a lot that it doesn't tell you, and some of it is vital as you get onto the later levels, making the training more in-depth and skippable, and you'd certainly have been onto a winner. I mentioned in my original review that it gets too difficult too soon, and after playing it again, that's absolutely true. It's impressive that Putty is so versatile and easy to manoeuvre with a single button joystick, but you only have to play Putty Squad to realise how much better the controls could have been. Here's the Super League to show how Putty compares to other puzzle platformers on the Amiga, and you'll be able to see my full in-depth breakdown of the Super League next week. For now though, you can see that Putty sits comfortably in the middle. I got some stick off the other members of the Amiga Action team at the time for only giving it 88%, but if I was reviewing it today, my score would be even lower. You will have fun playing Putty, but I think 7 out of 10 would be a more accurate score. Thank you for watching this episode of the re-review. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I really hope you've followed the instructions to make your own version of Putty like I showed you at the start. Please do give us a like and subscribe to show your support for the channel, and don't forget that super thanks are also enabled if you want to use them. If this is your first episode of the re-review, or if you've missed any of the previous ones, then we do have a playlist of all episodes right here on the channel. And I'm going to be back in 2 weeks' time with another episode. The music playing in the background right now is a little clue as to what game I'm going to be playing. All opinions expressed in this video are entirely mine and not those of the UK Gaming Network team, so if you agree or disagree with anything that I've said, please do let me know in the comments. You can also follow me over on Twitter at UKGNZoidberg. Until next time, happy retro gaming, bye for now.